Hello and welcome to ThePrint. I'm Snehesh Alex Philip. Well, a lot is happening around the world, but one news development that everybody is keenly following, including here in India where elections are going to be held, is the American election. Now, yes, it is some months from now, but a lot of interesting stuff is happening in America. For example, while I was following up on the news and I was discussing with my colleagues here at ThePrint, we realized that there's a phenomenon called Taylor Swift, which is having a huge impact on the American elections. Now, how can a singer possibly impact American elections? The other big news that has just taken place is the fact that a lot of NATO countries have come out and hit out at the former President Donald Trump, who could very well be the next US president if he gets elected. So I have with me two of my colleagues here at ThePrint to walk us through what is this Taylor Swift phenomenon, and what has Trump, why are the NATO nations so angry with Trump? So I have on my right, of course, I have Krishnankutty. She's part of the foreign affairs team. She covers MEA very closely. Do log on to ThePrint, go on to the diplomacy page and read stories by Pia. She tracks the MEA very closely. I have also with me on my left is Keshav Padmanabhan. Keshav is also part of the foreign policy team here at ThePrint. Yes, the foreign policy team is big, and Keshav also works along with Pia to closely track what is happening on the diplomacy front, especially when it comes to the Indian missions abroad and foreign affairs per se. So thank you so much for joining here on this discussion. Keshav, what is this phenomenon that everybody is raving about in the US?
So, the Taylor Swift phenomena, actually, it's something that came up in 2023 because it was the year of Taylor Swift. She had the Eras World Tour, which some reports put the final earnings at about $5.7 billion.
$5.7 billion,
which is more than the annual economic output for about 42 countries in this world. She was also named the Time Person of the Year, so Taylor Swift was everywhere in the United States. When it came to sports, her new boyfriend, Travis Kelce, just won the Super Bowl, right? So, with the Kansas City Chiefs. So, when you look at it, it was the year of Taylor Swift. And this set off alarm bells amongst the ecosystem that usually supports Donald Trump. The right-wing ecosystem is what they call it.
The Republicans.
The Republicans. But not necessarily the centrist Republicans, but more the right-wing Republicans who are hardcore supporters of Trump. In fact, on the 10th of January, Fox News and anchor Jesse Waters ran an entire segment saying Taylor Swift is a psychological operation done by the Department of Defense to ensure Joe Biden's re-election. And in this 5-minute segment, he pulled out this conversation from 2019 in NATO where they gave examples of global influencers and named Taylor Swift, and he used that as proof for this.
I remember that there was this concert that Taylor Swift was at, and she was wearing blue, and that led to a whole sort of discussion. And Trump has come out with a statement asking Taylor not to voice support for any candidate?
Yes. So in 2020, actually this starts in 2018 when Taylor in her home state of Tennessee supported the candidates against the Republicans in their Senate elections. And then in 2020 spoke out against Donald Trump and endorsed Joe Biden. But seeing the kind of popularity she has now, on Sunday, just before the Super Bowl finals, which was watched by 123 million people in the United States, Donald Trump came out with a post on his social media app, Truth Social, saying, I have done more for Taylor Swift for her to earn money than Joe Biden ever has. And it would be disloyal of her to endorse him. So, and so there is this fear amongst certain sections of the Republican Party that an endorsement by Taylor Swift could bring out the youth votes that Joe Biden is lagging behind. In fact, for example, a New York Times Siena poll from November 2023 shows that in a state like Nevada, 17% of registered Democrats, especially of the 18 to 35 age bracket, are going to be voting Republican. So there is a fear amongst the Democratic parties of losing the youth votes and the Republicans gaining from it. And if Taylor uses her 280 million followers on Instagram to voice political opinions, there is a fear that those youth voters would go back to the Democratic Party. So to sort of manage this, certain sections within the Republican Party have been trying to already warn their listeners, their viewers, that Taylor Swift is a psychological operation, that this is some sort of deep state in action, right? So that's how it delved into the conspiracy theories.
The fact is that she did support Joe Biden in 2020, as Keshav said, but I'm not really sure how much of it really converted into votes. But the fact is that when she put out her Instagram post asking voters to register, you were mentioning to me that there was a 150% raise in the new voters that were registered within 24 hours of her Instagram post. Is that so?
She's deeply influential. I mean, I'm not an expert on music or singers and songwriters, but she's a deeply influential.
That Keshav is, right? So we both learned from him.
But she's a deeply influential pop culture figure in America, especially among youth voters. Even when she's from Nashville, Tennessee, even when she had in the previous election encouraged people to come out and vote against for the Democratic candidate, in fact, there was a significant increase in that specific election, and that might be telling. But even when Keshav mentioned that the Super Bowl had 123 million views, that was the highest ever. And a lot of people say it was because this singer was frequenting a lot of these Super Bowl games because of her partner, and therefore garnering a lot of views and a lot of money for this mega sports event in America.
He mentioned something which said that, among the youth profile of even the Democrats, they say that certain percentage of youth will vote for Trump. Before I come to you on the larger question of Trump and where is he at, do you think Trump has so much of influence that even youngsters who are Democrat voters, they are going to vote for Trump?
Youngsters who are Democrat voters will vote for Trump, as in, will they flip?
Yeah, will they flip?
Well, the numbers, that varies from state to state. We have to remember America is a federal system, and even in the electoral college, which is a unique phenomenon in American elections, varies from state to state. That's why you have concepts like swing states that have not traditionally been Republican or Democrat. So that could change. I can't tell you a broad general population view of how youth voters will vote, but certainly in states like Nevada, states like Florida, which have been swing states in the past, you could definitely see a lot of people flipping, especially young ones.
Well, that's a possibility, and we'll have to wait and watch. So, Keshav, do you think that this time Taylor Swift will come out and endorse a leader, maybe Trump or Biden?
So far she hasn't, and her endorsement...
She wears blue at her concert.
I mean, that's what, if you believe X, that's sign enough. But this is the most coveted endorsement. In fact, earlier in January, the New York Times reported as to how Biden is trying very hard to get that endorsement. So far there has been no such endorsement forthcoming, but if it does, then, it could have some influence, but how much, we'd have to wait for November 5th and its aftermath.
But Joe Biden is the Democrat candidate, that's confirmed.
So far in the
primary... do we have to still wait?
I mean, so you have the Democratic primaries. He has one candidate running against him, Dean Phillips, who's a congressman from Minnesota, if I remember correctly. So there is the primaries ongoing, but so far it has been mostly Joe Biden's show in the three states, the three primaries. He's the incumbent president. So most likely, I mean, it's more a coronation at this point in July, whenever the Democratic National Convention is being held, for Biden being the presumptive candidate nominee for the Democrats in the US.
One of the things that Trump attacks Joe Biden on the fact, and as you said, a lot of youngsters feel that Joe Biden is just too old, right? At times, even when I watch his video, when he's falling off the stairs while climbing or walking around, I do feel that he is. But what is the age difference between Trump And Biden, not that Trump is very young.
4 years. And Donald Trump was the oldest president in this United States history, and that record stood till Biden ran and won.
Okay.
So they're competing each other for being the oldest elected leader in the US. There's no one who's been this old, 77 and 81. So Trump is 77, Biden is 81.
And if I might add, Dean Phillips, who is competing against Biden in the Democratic primary, has very respectfully said, maybe the Democrat Party needs a next generation leader. So he's also brought up that point from within the party, and it's reflective that these views are also held within the Democrat Party. Now, whether they can hedge their bets with someone new seems unlikely right now. The incumbent seems to.
So, Pia, is it like, for example, it's almost certain that from the Democrat side, Joe Biden would be the presidential candidate, as he should be, since he's the incumbent president. But for the Republicans, is Trump the final one?
In the Republican primary right now, which is, a primary is a state level competitions that either Republican or the Democrat Party will hold to pick their presidential nominee. Right now, Trump is in the lead. His only contender is Nikki Haley, an Indian origin former governor and a former diplomat.
And she's been attacking Trump.
She's been attacking Trump. She's been giving him good competition. And as far as I'll give you some numbers. As far as the primaries go, a candidate needs 1,215 delegates to win. Currently, Trump has 63. Nikki Haley has, I think, 17.
Yeah.
Now, it's a long way to go to 1,200.
Yeah.
But right now, it seems that he's in the lead. And Nikki Haley has at times, with this recent defamation suit that he lost to American journalist Jean Carroll, she used that as quite good ammunition against him. Of course, we know that he's the only US president in history to be impeached twice. She's brought that against him as well. The Capitol riots, which he's been accused of riling up, she's also used that against him. So right now it's a pretty even competition, and it's definitely a better competition compared to Dean Phillips and Joe Biden.
As you mentioned that Trump is someone who is known for making provocative statements, and as I said in the very beginning, and you've done a story on this, is the fact that among the NATO nations, there's a lot of hue and cry over a recent statement that Trump has made. And there is a fear psychosis, if I might say, about what happens if Trump comes to power.
Right.
What did Trump say? What did Trump actually say to really rile up the NATO countries, the closest allies? It's partnership.
Right. So when we are talking about NATO, we're talking about a 75-year-old military alliance between America, Canada, and Europe. Last Saturday, while Trump was on the campaign trail, he suggested that Russia invade NATO allies who were not meeting defense spending requirements. Now, NATO countries
He wanted Russia to invade NATO countries.
Well, he said, he was narrating a conversation he had with a world leader who he did not name, saying that, the world leader he was speaking to suggested that, if we don't meet the defense spending requirements, what are you going to do? And Trump said, well, if Russia were to invade you the next day, I wouldn't have a problem with it. That's how he framed it. Now,
and actually encourage it also, he said.
Encourage it, basically. And we know in the past that Trump has expressed wanting to pull the US out of NATO. He has been very harsh on European leaders for not meeting the defense spending requirement, which is 2% of GDP. And I think currently around 11 out of 31 NATO countries have met that spending requirement. So really, he brought down the hammer on these European leaders, especially in a 2018 NATO summit in Brussels, saying you guys need to start paying up. It's the same thinking that we're seeing now. But of course, to say that on a campaign trail, when you're pining for a presidential bid, some people are wondering whether he's shot himself in the foot. In fact, the Wall Street Journal, which some might say is a conservative newspaper in the US, put out an editorial saying, this might give people reason not to vote for Trump again, even against a mentally declining Biden.
Mentally declining Biden.
Right. So
those are really strong words, sir.
I mean, that's Wall Street Journal for you, but also that's what they're saying. one of the biggest, one of the biggest hurdles that Joe Biden is facing is the claims against his mental acumen and his declining mental acumen. Now, the Wall Street Journal is saying such provocative statements by Trump could be worse for him when we look at it. When we look at it on the other side of the fence, right? And as I mentioned, Trump is already facing, he's the only US president to be impeached twice. He has these defamation trials against him. He's been indicted as well. He's been accused of trying to play a role in overturning the results of the Georgia election or the Georgia state results during the 2020 election. He's got a lot against him. Now, to add fuel to the fire by saying, NATO allies should pay up, else Russia can invade them, I wouldn't have a problem. That's also,
especially when the war between Russia and Ukraine is on.
Right, it's not 2020 anymore.
So, Keshav, Trump made a similar statement, I think, in 2019, where at that time also the NATO countries, as she said, were completely taken aback. In your sense, do you think Trump has really a good chance at becoming the next American president?
So if you look at all of the opinion polls till about the 8th of February, he's leading by 2 or 3 percentage points against Joe Biden in most of them, but be it you can take any of the top polls. Even in the New York Times Siena poll from November, out of 6 battleground states, these are swing states, however you want to call them, he's leading in 5, and by significant margins. In Nevada, for example, he has a 10-point lead over Joe Biden. The only significant state where Biden is leading is the state of Wisconsin, right? If you look at it, Pennsylvania, Nevada, all of these states are falling towards supporting Donald Trump. So does he have a good chance? He does. He has a very good chance of becoming the next president of the United States of America, and that is something that people are extremely afraid of, especially within the Democratic Party, as to how this would change US's position in the world and its domestic affairs.
Pia, my last question to you. Trump is a businessman. Many say that he failed as a businessman because, whatever be it. But a lot of, diplomacy with him is transactional. So from a India-US perspective, now the India-US ties have seen an increase over the years, and now, especially on defense and other things, on space, there's a lot of co-production and co-manufacturing that has been spoken about. If Trump comes to power, does the equation between India and the US change, or does the state carries on, the policy carries on?
Well, after Modi's visit to the US last year, the Indian government said, this is quite a litmus test to show that it doesn't matter who's in power in Washington, Modi can work with anyone. But I will say that it was Trump and Trump's administration, especially his US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, who were the first to be hard on China and looked towards India as to counterbalance that. In fact, the Quad sort of took shape. People started talking about Quad when the Trump administration began giving impetus to it. It's very likely that if Trump would come back into power, he would keep that thinking going. Of course, on terms of trade, he's never been quite happy with India in certain trade situations. He wasn't very keen on even a mini trade deal with India. There was the whole Harley-Davidson affair as well. Exactly. But now that India and US have removed a lot of trade disputes at the WTO, in many other commercial aspects as well, they're making new forays. I think those hurdles have been removed. And as you mentioned, joint defense production, jet engine deals, that's really changed the game going forward. I would assume that no matter who comes in Washington in November, that India would be able to continue the leaps and bounds it's made in this bilateral relationship.
Well, there you go. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining this discussion. As I said, viewers, do log on to ThePrint, read stories done by Keshav and Pia, they closely track not just the MEA but also a lot that is happening around the world. And not many of those stories would generally have an India angle. The problem is that we all tend to try and bring some India angle to any story that is being done. But you should log on and read those stories, because those stories matter, because those stories have global implications. But thank you so much for logging on to The Print and watching this.
Thank you.
Thank you.